Hello students. Now after poetry, drama, essays, we are to start with Huxley's novel Brave New World. Something about the author. Aldous Huxley was born on 26 July 1894 near Godalming in Surrey. He started writing poetry and short stories in his early 20s, but his literary reputation was established with his first novel Chrome Yellow that came out in 1921. This was followed by some bright, brilliant satires of contemporary society. Antique, Those Barren Leaves, and Point Counterpoint. Towards the Second World War, he could smell the confusion of a society that was constantly churning and getting dangerously out of control. In response to it, his great novels of ideas, Brave New World and the pacifist novel Eyeless in Gaza, were followed by a series of wise and brilliant essays written in volumes like Music at Night and Ends and Means. In 1937, Huxley moved to California and worked for a time there as a screenwriter in Hollywood. With the world bracing for war, he swiftly turned to believe in mystical enlightenment as the only key to solving the problems of the world. The exploration of the inner life through mysticism and hallucinogenic drugs find expression in both his fictional and non-fictional works. Three traumatic events had a considerable mark on young Huxley. His mother, who died of cancer in 1908, 2 years later, while he was a schoolboy at Eton, he contracted an eye infection which made him almost blind for a time, and it severely impaired his vision for the rest of his life. And the third event was the suicide of his brother Trevelyan in August 1914, and he lost the person to whom he felt closest in life. In Eyeless in Gaza, some 20 years later, we find some indication of this indelible pain which these three tragic occurrences left in his life. To a considerable degree, they account for the darkness, pungency, and cynicism that feature so prominently in Huxley's work throughout the interwar period. Brave New World, although has become with Orwell's 1984 one of the twin pillars of the anti-utopian tradition in literature and a byword for all that is most repellent and nightmarish in the world to come. It was written with Huxley's gaze very much on the crisis-torn present of Britain in 1931. So Brave New World and 1984, they are both futuristic novels, and they are near contenders for the best anti-utopian novel of their times. And both these novels, they are written with a vision that under the totalitarian governments, this is how the world or society is going to emerge in near future. Brave New World is the fruit of Huxley's close observation of the psyche of the post-First World War Europe, which resulted in Bolshevism. Bolshevism, the term that comes from Bolshevik, and it is a kind of a revolutionary Marxist political approach that is counter to the capitalist state system. Fascism is a form of government in which most of the country's power is held by one dictatorial ruler, and these are mostly totalitarian and or authoritarian one-party states, and there is use of violence, arrests, killings by the government in order to stop any kind of opposition against the government. Inflation, depression, Hitler, the Second World War, the ruin of Europe, and all but universal famine. So these were kind of factors that resulted or that came out or that were the after effect of the First World War. The development of totalitarian states, the rise of communism in Russia, the findings of psychoanalysis by Freud and anthropology, the development of the atom bomb, the fragmentation of social life, all these factors, they were interpreted psychologically and imaginatively by Huxley in this novel Brave New World. The basic ideas underlying his novel are, in his own words, the completely organized society, just counter to what he was seeing, the kind of society that he was seeing emerging after the First World War. So now he envisions a society that is completely organized. The scientific caste system, the abolition of free will by methodical conditioning, the servitude made acceptable by regular doses of chemically induced happiness, the orthodoxies drummed in by nightly courses of sleep teaching. So this is what would be provided to the citizens or the residents of that brave new world, of that new world, and then there would emerge a completely organized society that would be stable. This he says in Brave New World Revisited. The novel represents a picture of scientific utopia whose citizens are conditioned by a benevolent government to think and feel precisely what is good for themselves and what is convenient for the government, in order that the government functions smoothly but without any resistance whatsoever on the part of the citizens. But a utopia is an ideal society where social and political systems are conducive to human well-being. The human beings, the residents are also happy, and the political systems, they are conducive for their well-being, so that there is no resistance from their side, and the political system also functions in a smooth way. Though Brave New World appears to have achieved ideal perfection in terms of science, but the age-old errors and shortcomings, they seem to overshadow human societies still, and these shortcomings we see which were present in the old age, they are still prevalent in the new world, and that's why the new world is rendered as a failed society. It's not that successful, or it cannot be termed as successful in the right sense. All the old problems, they are still persisting in the new world, with an added disadvantage that life has been rendered purposeless and without meaning, because the residents or the citizens, they are conditioned in a way that they are working as automatons. They do not have any free will of their own. The novel Brave New World, it opens in the building of the Central London Hatchery and Conditioning Centre. This is run on the World State's motto, community, identity and stability, where here in this centre, female ova and the male sperms, they are fertilized in incubators, that is the test tubes, where before they are being hatched into 5 types of human beings. So the superior ones, the alphas and betas, they were kept in the incubators until definitely bottled. The inferiors, called gammas, deltas and epsilons, were produced through Bokanovsky's process from a divided egg into 96 identical twins. So these they were one egg. Through this process, one egg was divided into many parts, and every single part this grew into a perfectly formed embryo, and every embryo produced, or it developed into a full-sized adult. And in this way, from one single egg, 96 identical twins could be produced through this Volkanovski's process. So this advantageous production of standard men and women, this paved the way towards community identity and stability for the first time in history in this new world. During the production process, the embryos, they were conditioned and predestined. Babies were born as socialized human beings, as scientists and intellectuals, or as laborers and sewage workers. The lower the caste, the shorter the oxygen supply. The oxygen supply was provided for a shorter period of time in order that the brain gets less developed, resulting in the production of inferior kinds of human beings, the epsilons. Some of them were also given heat conditioning, as they were predestined to emigrate to the tropics to be miners, silk spinners and steel workers. They would love heat and hate cold, so they were conditioned in order to start loving the heat that they were to face when they would migrate to the tropics. So in this way, they started loving the environment where they were predestined to be sent. That is the secret of happiness and virtue, said the director of this center. Liking what you have got to do. All conditioning aims at that, making people like their inescapable destiny. So, and that is the key to happiness, that you are happy with your lot of life. This stratification of the whole society into 5 broad groups, with each group being fully convinced that its form of intellectual ability and job competence is the best, makes them all happy and contented. Delta children are conditioned to hate books and flowers, and they are made to wear khaki. They'll grow up with what the psychologists used to call an instinctive hatred of books and flowers. So they'll be safe from books and botany all their lives, said the director. Moreover, books might give them ideas and decondition their reflexes, and that's why they are kept away from books. So psychological treatment is given to them. Hypnopedia or sleep teaching is also another method used for conditioning and giving class consciousness lessons to children while they are sleeping. This is a great moralizing and socializing device used for instruction. Microphones operated with switches, they are placed under the pillows of children. We are shown the sleep teaching of the betas in the novel. The microphone says, "Alpha children wear grey. They work much harder than we do because they are so frightfully clever. I am really awful glad I am a beta because I don't want to work so hard, and then we are much better than the gammas and deltas." So they are made to learn to be satisfied with their lot of life and not to be jealous with their superiors, the alphas. And they say gammas are stupid, they all wear green, and delta children wear khaki. All, oh no, I don't want to play with delta children, they are far inferior to us. And epsilons are all still worse, they are too stupid to be able to read or write. Besides, they wear black, which is such a beastly color. I am so glad I am a beta. So this lesson is repeated 120 times 3 times a week for 30 months, said the director, with further advanced lessons conditioning the child's mind according to the designs of the state. So they get perfect human beings as um, they have actually desired to design. So the world controllers coordinate together so that the overall desired results are achieved through alphas, betas, deltas, gammas and epsilons, though they never meet on social planes. In the modern world state, all inequalities of the old democratic social system have been done away with. Poor housing, poverty, sickness, they have all been removed from the modern world. People in the old days, they used to practice monogamy and romance. They were narrow-minded and exclusive. Freud was the first to reveal the dangers of family life. Taking cue from him, in the modern state, people have been freed of all these constraining structures. Everyone belongs to everyone else. Now, there is no sexual restraint. Life is emotionally easy as compared to the old days when sexual urge had a single outlet: my love, my baby. With mothers and lovers, with poverty and uncertainties, these passions used to grow wild. But now the controllers, they questioned as to how could there be stability in such a society where there is so much of uh, inequality, so much of distress. So attempts were made to preserve you from having emotions at all, and also to release women from the burden of childbearing. So ways were found. Children got to be hatched and conditioned outside the mother's body. Test tube babies. God, soul and heaven, they were all dispensed with, and old age was finally conquered. So people were relieved of any moral weightage. That is, they didn't have any moral burden as such on their minds. Old men in the bad old days used to renounce, retire, take to religion, spend their time in reading and thinking. But now, such is progress. The old men work, the old men copulate, the old men have no time, no leisure from pleasure. So all the time they are involved in pleasure. They are hedonistic. There is always soma, delicious soma, scampering from feely to feely, from one girl to pneumatic girl. So they can always enjoy and have the company of feeling the proximity of one girl after the other. In the society of the brave new world, there is a freedom in sexual matters and drug soma that brings sleep and sweet dreams, physical enjoyment that is obtained through feelies in theatres. Eternally young men are there who chew sex hormones and they don't grow old. It is a society that's blindly given to pleasure, an anti-intellectual society, so to say. After their day's work, they are supplied with a soma ration. Everyone has all the amenities of life, so everybody enjoys all kinds of luxuries in life. There is no poverty, no hunger, no quarrels, no mental tensions, because everybody is satisfied with his or her own lot of life. The new world has become free from dirt, disease, squalor, old age and fear of war. Women have become free from labor pains and the sufferings of bearing and bringing up children. So they are also free now. Through the progress of science, a near perfect society from a materialistic point of view has been achieved in the new world. But still, there are certain loopholes in this near perfect society, and there are examples here and there of defiance, resistance, non-conformity in the novel that are somehow handled with overdoses of soma and other tranquilizers. But the main character in the novel, Savage, John Savage, he disturbs, when he comes to this new world, he disturbs the normal life of this new world society at every point. He creates emotional tension in the heart of Lenina, that another character, that shows that her conditioning has not been perfect. She is desperate to make love with him, but he roughly pushes her away and calls her a whore because she has relations with many men. And this Savage, coming from the Savage reservation, he doesn't approve of. Love for the man still burns in her heart, that seems to be against the principles on which the brave new world was founded. That is, she should be having no emotions whatsoever, but despite her conditioning, she does show her emotions uh, of love towards Savage. Savage challenges but the scientific materialism and hedonism, and in the conflict that follows, he gets destroyed. John Savage, who is the hero of the novel, is the son of the director of the hatchery and conditioning center, and Linda, who was his girlfriend, a beta minus. These two had gone to the reservation of savages some time back, and after some time, Linda was somehow lost. The director tried to search her for quite some time, but he could not find her, and ultimately he returned to the new world all alone. Linda was left there in the reservation of savages, where she gave birth to Joan Savage. But after the birth of Joan, she fell in love with her son, and she could not leave the place. But as she was conditioned to the life in the new world, she had her own lot of suffering. Whereas Savage also, as he was born and brought up with the savages, he had his own lot of pain and suffering in the old world. Bernard and Lenina now visit the reservation of savages, and there they locate Joan Savage and Linda, and out of scientific curiosity they bring these two back to the new world. So Joan Savage, he lived with his mother in the reservation of savages that was surrounded by a high tension wire fence. To touch the fence is instant death, and there is no escape from a savage reservation. So the savages who used to live there in this reservation, they were not allowed to leave that old world of theirs. Children were still born, not decanted there. So it was the old world still there. About 60,000 Indians and half-breeds lived there. They preserved their old customs, marriage, families, Christianity and ancestor worship. Extinct languages, infectious diseases, priests, poisonous lizards, strange animals. So savage, but still he was taught by his mother how to read and write, and he is a great fan of Shakespeare, and he is a poetic figure also. Linda and Savage, they are of sufficient scientific interest, and they are brought to the new world by Bernard and Lenina. Linda retains her love for the new world and its conveniences. She is a kind of an amalgam of the two worlds because she has experienced life in both the worlds. Now that she has returned to the new world, she is old and blotched. She is hated by all, so she takes to soma until death overpowers her while she is in the Park Lane Hospital. Savage, he is well versed in Shakespeare, and he is full of Shakespearean dreams. He imagines himself as Romeo or Prince Ferdinand, and he has that dream because he has been all through his childhood days he has been listening to the enchanted world or enchanted new world his mother had been telling him about. mm, and he imagines about this brave new world of the Tempest. He is ready to sacrifice his life for his love, Lenina, when he comes to this new world. He is also a tragic figure like Othello. All the efforts of Mustafa Mond, one of the 10 world directors, one controllers rather, he tries to convince and mold Savage to the ways of the new world, but all his efforts they fail. Savage still insists that Othello is good. It is better than the Feelies, to which the movies, which give you some proximity to the girls, to which Mond replies, "Oh, of course it is. But that's the price we have to pay for stability. We have to make certain compromises in order to establish or in order to enjoy stability in society. You have got to choose between happiness and what people used to call high art. We have sacrificed the high art for stability." Soma tablets, the solution to all problems in the new world, are also outrightly rejected by Savage, who is convinced that I don't want comfort, I want God, I want poetry, I want real danger, I want freedom, I want goodness, I want sin. Mond says to him that it was happiness that he wanted, not to mention the right to grow old and ugly and impotent, the right to have syphilis and cancer. So he is wanting unhappiness in his life, he said, the right to have too little to eat, the right to be tortured by unspeakable pains of every kind. I claim them all, said the Savage. So he is a kind of a rebel, and ultimately he has to die in order that the brave new world survives. So in the end, when he has come to the new world and he has disturbed the new world. So in order that this brave new world remains intact, the rebellious person, Savage, needs to die. And finally, he is a rebel, and in the end, when Lenina demands his love, he pushes her and starts whipping her and himself in turns. And finally, he commits suicide. So Huxley, in his preface to the novel, that is both a fantasy and a satire, writes about the most serious defect in the story. The savage, he says, is offered only two alternatives: an insane life in utopia or the life of a primitive in an Indian village. A life that is more human in some respects, but that is full of pain and suffering for him. Huxley intended to offer a third alternative to him, a possibility of sanity somewhere between the two extremes, if he were to rewrite the book.